Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Math Made Easy with Terry in 10 minutes. So we're going to move on to other parts of implicit differentiation. So we're going to talk about how do you find stationary points and nature of stationary points with using implicit differentiation. So question where the x and y, where you cannot completely separate the y from the x, okay? So how do you go about it? So before I proceed, please make sure you review the previous video on this series. So I talked about the 7 rules of how to use implicit differentiation. So it's important that you've written that down in your notebook because I'm going to be referring to that document while I'm going to be explaining how to solve questions about this. Okay. And before I proceed, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you've not clicked notification bell, I don't know what you're waiting for. Don't forget to do that so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first person to know. All right, so let's go. So just a quick reminder, I've talked about this, and it's also important that you go to my differentiation series. So I've talked at length on how to find stationary point and the nature of stationary point. But in this video, we're going to talk about how to do it using implicit differentiation. Is that okay? So I told you before that when a stationary point, the y over the x is equal to 0. So if you're looking for stationary point, you just equate the y over the x to be equal to 0. So that's our stationary point. Okay. And also, I also told you that when you're solving and your second derivative, the 2y over the x squared is less than 0, it means the stationary point is what? Maximum. And when the second derivative is greater than what? 0, it means that is what? Minimum. So we've talked about this earlier. Okay. So we've talked about this before. So just a quick reminder that stationary point, the y over the x equals to 0. When your second derivative is less than 0, is maximum. When the second derivative is greater than 0, is what? Minimum. All right. All right. So let's go. Let's pick this example now. Let's assume that we have, we're told that given x squared minus 4xy is equal to y squared minus what? 20. We're now told to find 1, the coordinates are stationary point. Okay. The coordinates are stationary points. And number 2, we're told to then determine the nature of stationary points. Determine the nature at stationary points. Or you can say at this point. So let me just write stationary so that to be very clear. Okay. At stationary points. Okay, so let's look at this now. All right, so we are given an very obvious, it's implicit, and they want you to find the coordinate at stationary point, also to determine the nature at stationary point. So as usual, like what we did in the previous video, I'm going to quickly go from step 1 to 4. So the first thing you have to differentiate this. So the first thing is that I told you that you have to differentiate x as normal. The second thing in step 2 is that when you're differentiating y, you have to make sure that you add the y over the x. Step 3 is that all rules of differentiation apply. So let's maybe stop at step 3 first, okay? Then we'll now move on from there. So that means we're having x squared minus 4xy is equal to y squared minus 20, all right? So like I did in the previous video, I'm going to differentiate both of them, each of them separately. So we're going to start with x squared. Now, When you differentiate x squared, is going to give you 2x. So remember I said when you're differentiating x, you differentiate it normally. The next one we have is going to become 4xy. Okay, it's going to be 4xy. So the same thing you can see is 4xy. So that means there's a product. So the x and the y variable are multiplied together. So that means we have to use the product rule, right? We're going to use the product rule here. And just to remind you, I'm going to solve the product rule. So remember I told you the product rule. So I have a video on the product rule where I told you it's going to be uv prime plus vu prime, okay? So the product rule is uv prime plus vu prime. So we're going to make this. This is going to be our u, and this is going to be the v. So the u is equal to x. So that means the u prime, when differentiate x, is going to give us 1. So as usual. So, but when you differentiate x, you differentiate it normally. You don't do anything else. But now v is going to give us y. And when you differentiate v prime is going to give us what? 1. But when you differentiate y, you have to add the y over dx. And 1 times the y over dx is going to give you what? The y over dx. All right? So therefore, what the product rule now will now be the u is going to be x multiplied by the v prime, which is the y over dx, plus the v is going to be what? Y multiplied by the u prime, which is going to give us 1, which is going to be the same thing as saying x dy over dx plus y. So we're going to take all these answers now and put it back into this. So it's going to become 4 into brackets x dy over dx plus y. Okay? Then you open the bracket, and this is going to give us 4 times 4x will give us 4x dy over dx. 4 times y will give you also what? 4y. Okay? So the next one we're going to differentiate now is going to be y squared. Right? So we're going to have y squared. So we have y squared. Now, when you differentiate y squared, it's going to give you what? 2y. But because you're differentiating y, you have to add what? The y over what? The x. And the final one we have there is 20. Okay, so 20, when you differentiate 20, is going to give you 0. So remember, in the rules of differentiation, anytime you differentiate a constant, it's going to be equal to 0. All right. So what we're going to do now, we're going to replace all the initial questions with the derivative. Is that okay? So that means the x squared, we're going to replace it with 2x. So it's going to become the x squared. We're going to have it as 2x. Okay? Minus. So the next one is minus 4xy. So it's going to be minus all this. So it's going to be minus all this. So we have 4x dy over dx plus 4y. Then the next one is equal to y squared. So it's equal to y squared. So we're going to have, it'll be equal to y squared is going to be now 2y dy over what? dx. Then the last one is minus 20, and it's going to be minus what? 0. Okay? So it's going to become minus 0. Then we'll open the bracket. So it's going to give us 2x minus 4x dy over dx minus 4y will be equal to 2y minus dy, 2y dy over dx minus 0 will count way out. So now, if you now go to step 4 now, I told you to make dy over dx subject of the formula, all right? So step 4, you have to make dy over dx subject of the formula. So please make sure you've written down the steps. So there's a reason why I write this down, so that you can follow my my line of thought, okay, my thought process. So you can follow that with me. So let's go. So we need to make dy over dx subject of the formula. So the first thing is that I'm going to take away 2x and minus 4y to the right-hand side, and I'll bring 2y plus dy over dx to the left-hand side, okay? So what I can do, you can either just move 2x over here, all right, and take 4y over there, and then bring 2y to this part, okay? So for instance, the 2x will become minus 2x in the right-hand side, and this is going to be plus 4y. But I noticed that students prefer subtracting both sides and all the stuff, so we're going to use that method here. So let's go. So what we're going to do first, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides so that I can get rid of the 2x on the left-hand side. So it's going to become 2x. We're going to have minus 2x, okay? Minus 4x dy over dx minus 4y will be equal to 2y dy over dx. Then we now have what? Minus what? 2x. So this will cancel that, okay? Now, also, the next thing now is that we need to now remove minus 4y from the left-hand side. So I'm going to add 4y to both sides, so I can remove the minus 4y. Are you seeing it? So I'm going to add 4y to both sides, okay? So it's going to become minus 4x dy over dx minus 4y. Now it's going to become plus 4y will be equal to 2y dy over dx minus 2x. Then we now have what? Plus 4y. So this one is going to cancel this one out. Now, but I need to have the dy over dx on the left-hand side, okay? So what I'm going to do then, I'm going to subtract my 2y dy over dx from both sides so that I can have it on the left-hand side, minus 2y dy over dx on both sides, okay? So it's going to give me, we'll then have minus 4x dy over dx, okay, minus 2y dy over dx will be equal to 2y dy over dx minus 2y dy over dx, okay? Then we now have minus 2x, then plus 4y, okay? Then this will cancel this out, okay? Then this is now going to give us minus 4x dy over dx minus 2y dy over dx, okay, will be equal to minus 2x plus 4y. All right. So as you can see now, we all have the y over dx on the left-hand side, and we have the other variables on the right-hand side. So the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to factorize to collect like terms, okay? So what is common here is the y over dx, and you're going to be left with minus 4x minus 2y, okay? Which will be equal to minus 2x plus 4y. Now I need to get rid of this minus 4x minus 2y. So I'll divide both sides by minus 4x minus 2y, and divide this by minus 4x minus 2y, okay? So this will cancel this. Are you seeing it? Then we're going to have dy over dx will be equal to minus 2x plus 4y divided by minus 4x minus 2y, okay? So like I said, you can leave your answer like this, or if you want to, if the question asks you to simplify to the simplest form, you can factorize this. So the common factor there is 2, and you have minus x plus 2y, okay? Divided by the common factor, there's also 2, and you're left with minus 2x minus y. Then 2, we cancel that. So then you then have minus x plus 2y, all divided by minus 2x minus y. Okay, and that will be the answer for that. Okay, so we found the dy over dx. Good. Now, but the question is not asking us to find dy over dx. The reason why we have to find dy over dx is because we need to find the stationary point. And remember, at stationary point, dy over dx will be equal to what? 0. So that means what we need to do is to find the stationary point, okay? So we know from here, we know that at stationary point, okay, at stationary point, we know that dy over dx is equal to 0, okay? So I'm going to use this, okay? Just, it's my preference. You can use this one, all right? It's still the same thing. We'll give it exactly the same thing. So that means at stationary point, dy over dx is equal to 0. So it means that minus 2x plus 4y divided by minus 4x minus 2y is equal to what? 0. Are you seeing it? Now, to get rid of this fraction, I'm going to multiply both sides by minus 4x minus 2y, and I'll multiply this side as well by minus 4x minus 2y, okay? So what this is going to be now is that we're then going to have minus 4x minus 2y, okay, multiplied by minus 2x plus 4y divided by minus 4x minus 2y, okay, will be equal to 0, then multiplied by minus 4x minus 2y, okay? So this will cancel this, and this is going to be all to 0, okay? So that means we're going to then have we'll now have minus 2x plus 4y is equal to 0, okay? Then we then have this, we take we add 2x to both sides, okay? We add 2x to both sides. So it's gonna give us minus 2x plus 2x. Then we now have plus 4y will be equal to 0 plus 2x. This will cancel this out. Then you then have 4y. So you then have 4y is equal to 2x. Then you divide both sides by 2, okay, to simplify. So then, therefore, you will now have 2y is equal to what? X. Or you can say x is equal to 2y. All right. So now this is the step 6, 6i from the steps. So this is what we've just done. So remember, I told you in the steps, a stationary point. So this is step 6. So this is step 6i, okay? So remember, I gave you the steps. So step 6i. Now, the next step is that we have to go to 6ii now, okay? So 6ii, I told you to replace the value of x to the original equation to get the value of y. So replace the value of x to the original equation to get the value of y. All right. So step 6i. Okay, so we have to replace the value of x to the original equation to get the value of I, okay, of y. Now, what was the original equation first? So if you go up, we can get the original equation. I've done a lot already. So the original equation was x squared minus 4xy is equal to y squared minus 20, okay? So we're going to get the original equation back. So we're going to have x squared minus 4xy is equal to y squared minus 20. All right. So we are now told that we have to substitute x into the original equation. So that means we have to substitute x into this original equation. So that means anywhere we see x, we're going to replace it with 2y. Okay. So let's go. So we're going to have here, we're going to have 2y squared, then minus 4. Anywhere we see x, we put 2y, 2y, then we now have y will be equal to y squared minus 20. So you see, step 6, I said replace the value of x in terms of y to the original equation to get the value of y, right? So let's go. So let us now get the value of y here. So let's go. 2y squared is going to give us 4y squared minus 4 times 2 will give you 8. Y will give you 8y squared will be equal to y squared minus 20. Okay. So what I can do, I can decide to, so it's going to be, I simplify the left-hand side, or I can just get y to the other side. So to get y to the other side, y squared, sorry. So I'm going to subtract y squared from both sides so that all the y squared will be together, then I can solve. Then it's going to give me 4y squared minus 8y squared, okay, minus y squared, okay, will be equal to y squared minus y squared, then minus 20, okay? So y squared will cancel this. So we're going to have 4 minus 8 is going to give you minus 4. Minus 4 minus 1 will give you minus 5y squared will be equal to minus 20, okay? Then we're going to have, to get rid of the minus 5, I'm going to divide both sides by minus 5. Okay, so I'm going to divide both sides by minus 5. Okay, we're dividing both sides now by minus 5. So this will cancel that. Then we now have y squared will be equal to 20 divided by minus 5 will give you 4. All right. Then we've gotten 4. So we then know that we cannot get rid of this squared by finding the square root of both sides. I'm going to find the square root. I remember square root is plus or minus. So I've talked about this in quadratic equation. So this will cancel that. So y is going to be equal to plus or minus square root of 4. And this is going to give us plus or minus 2. Okay. So therefore, y is equal to plus 2 or minus 2. So that's the answer for y. Now, step 6 I, okay, now said that we need to substitute the value of y we've gotten into step 1 to get the corresponding value of x. So that means we need to substitute the value of y into step 6i to get the corresponding value of x, because here we already know that x was equal to what? 2y. Are you seeing it? So x was equal to 2y. So we then have to substitute it. So step 6i, okay? So we have then step 6i. So now we then have to substitute. So we then have to substitute y equal to plus or minus 2 into step 6i, all right? So we already know that x was equal to what? 2y, all right? So that means we can now get the value for x now, all right? So that means there are two possible values. So when y is equal to +2, or we can solve when y is equal to what? -2. So when y is equal to +2, so we're going to have x will be equal to 2y. So x is going to be equal to 2, but instead of having y, we're going to have +2. So therefore, x is going to be equal to what? 4. So because we now know that x is 4, then we can write it in coordinate form. So when x is 4, y is what? 2. So we've gotten the first coordinate as stationary what? Point. Now we do the same thing here when when y is -2. So x will be equal to 2y. Now, but in this case now, y is going to be equal to -2. So therefore, 2 times -2, x is going to be equal to -4. So in this case now, when x is equal to -4, right? Y will be equal to what? -2. And then we've gotten the second what? Coordinate as stationary point. Now, if you now go to the fourth part, 6IV, it says that to find the second derivative, like in step 5. So that means what we need to now do is to find the second derivative. So we need to find, so that's step 6IV, okay? We need now to find the second derivative. So we have to find the second derivative, so that is d2y over dx squared from the first derivative, which was the y over dx, and what was that equal to? So we have to go back and find the y over dx, and the y over dx, we had it to be, yes, we had it to be minus 2x plus 4y divided by minus 4x minus 2y. Okay, so let's go. So this was from minus 2x plus 4y divided by minus 4x minus what? 2y. Okay, so the same thing. You can see that there are two functions that have been divided here. We have u and we have v, so it's going to be u divided by v, all right? So because it's u divided by v, we have to use what? Quotient rule. So if you remember, we talked about quotient rule, and I've discussed this earlier. So in this case, remember that quotient rule, the formula was vu prime minus uv prime divided by what? V squared. So that means in this case here, in this example, our u will be equal to minus 2x plus 4y. So the u prime now is going to be, when you differentiate minus 2x, is going to give you -2. So when you differentiate x, you differentiate it normally. Now, but when you differentiate 4y, it's going to give us 4. Then it's going to, y is going to be what? dy over dx. Are you seeing it? Okay, so the next one is that you're going to have v. So v is minus 4x minus 2y. So the v prime will be equal to, differentiate minus 4x is going to give us -4, okay? Because when you differentiate x, you don't add the y over the x. But when you differentiate y, minus 2y, it's going to give us -2. But if you add this, you have to add the y over what? The x. Then we're going to put it in the formula now. So we're going to have the 2y over the x squared will now be equal to our v, which is minus 4x minus 2y. Then the u prime will be -2 plus 4 dy over dx minus the u will give you -2x plus 4y. And the v prime is going to give us what? Minus 4 minus 2 dy over what? dx. All divided by the v squared is going to give us minus 4x minus 2y all squared. Okay? And that is the second derivative. Okay? Now, but step 6v now said to determine the nature, okay? Because we're not just determining the coordinate, we need to determine the nature, right? So we've gotten this. So this is step, we're going to the next one, step 6v. So it said to determine the nature of each of the x and y coordinates, you have to do it by substituting the y dx to be equal to what? 0. So that means you substitute the x coordinates, you substitute the y coordinate, as well as dy over dx to be equal to 0. Okay? So that means we're going to substitute. So the first coordinate we had was coordinate at stationary point. We had 4 and 2. So we're going to start with the first one, 4 and 2. So we're going to substitute 4 and 2 into the second derivative. So we're going to substitute. So we're going to substitute 4 and 2 into the second derivative. Now what we're substituting here, in this case, the x is going to be equal to, the x is equal to 4. The y is equal to 2. And also I told you that you have to then substitute the y over dx to be equal to what? 0, because at stationary point, the y over dx is 0. Okay? So that's what you're going to do. So let's go. So we're going to have, so we have the 2y over dx squared will be equal to minus 4. Instead of having x, I'm going to put this 4 here. Are you seeing it? Then minus 2. Instead of having y, I'm going to put 2. All right. Then we have the next one is going to be minus 2 plus 4. Now, instead of having instead of having dy over dx, I'm going to put it as what? 0. Okay. Okay. Minus. Then the same thing, I'm going to put this. We're going to have minus 2. Instead of having x, I'm going to put 4. So basically, anywhere you see x, you put 4. Anywhere you see y, you put 2. Anywhere you see dy over dx, you put 0. Okay. So we have plus 4 into bracket. The y is what? 2. Okay. Then we now have minus 4 minus 2. And anyway, you see dy over dx, you're going to put what? 0. Close the bracket. All divided by, you open the bracket, so it'll be minus 4. Anyway, you see x, you put 4 minus 2. Anyway, you see y, you put 2 there. Then you close all the bracket and squared. Then you punch all this into your calculator. Okay. You punch all this into your calculator, and that should give you 1 over 10. So 1 over 10, which is the same thing as saying 0.1. And 0.1 is greater than 0. So when your second derivative is greater than 0, it means it's what? Minimum. So now we can say, therefore, the point 4, 2 is going to be a what? A minimum point. All right. So we're going to do exactly the same thing now for the second point. So the second point we had was minus 4 minus 2. So technically, what you just have to do is that anywhere you see 4, you put minus 4, and 2, you put minus 2. So we're going to substitute the same thing. So let me see if I can reduce this a bit so I can make use. So the next one is that we then have step. Oh, we're going to substitute. Okay. Minus 4 and minus 2. Okay. Or let me just, because some students might find it hard to read. Let me just be going, I'll scroll up and down, okay? Let's see. So we then have to then substitute minus 4 and minus 2, okay, into the second derivative. So here, the x is going to be equal to minus 4, all right? The y will be equal to minus 2, and the dy over dx will be equal to what? 0, all right? So the same thing we did. We're going to do the 2y over dx squared. Okay, so the 2y over dx squared will be equal to, then you substitute it. So the 2y over dx squared is going to become, so it'll be minus 4. Then the x, you're going to put minus 4. So it's basically exactly the same thing. So here, instead of having 4, you have minus 4. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. And I don't know if this will allow me to copy. If I can copy this. Is that possible? Oh. Oh. Yeah, right. So yeah, maybe. Nope, it's not gonna work. So I'll just have to do it manually then. Okay. All right. So we then have to substitute it. We do it manually. So you just do the same thing. So we have the 2y with the x squared will be equal to, so you're gonna have minus 4. So the x, you're gonna put minus 4 here, then minus 2, then the y, you're gonna have what? Minus 2. Okay. Then this one multiplied by minus 2 plus, okay, so you have minus 2, then we have 4. The y over dx is what? 0. And that'll give you the first one, just to be sure. Let me check, is that correct? Yep. Then we then have minus. We're gonna have minus 2. The x is minus 4 plus 4. The y is minus 2. Okay. So plus 4. The y is minus 2. All right. Then multiplied by minus 4 minus 2. The dy over dx is going to be what? 0. We close that. Then all divided by, we then have minus 4. Then the x is minus 4. Okay. Then minus 2. The y is also minus 2. And all raised to power what? 2. All right, so when you press this in your calculator, this is going to give you minus 1 over what? 10, which is the same thing as minus 0.1, and this is less than 0. And when your second derivative is less than 0, it means that is what? Maximum. Okay, so now we can now say that in this case, that the point we had here, minus 4, minus 2, this point is a what? It's a maximum point. All right, and that will be that for that. So not only did we find the nature of stationary point, we also found the what? The type as well. Okay, so that is how you do it. So you see that basically I just followed exactly the steps. I didn't do anything. I just followed the steps so that it's be easy for you to have to understand and process how you solve this kind of questions. Okay. Okay, so the next video, I'm going to talk about the equation of tangent and normal using implicit differentiation. So it's important as well that you subscribe and you click the notification bell. And I would advise that go to the textbook and practice so many questions about this. So you have to just be first conversant with the product rule, the quotient rule, and the rest of it. Is that okay? And all the laws of differentiation. Then you'll be fine. So the next video, we'll talk about the tangent, equation of a tangent, equation of a normal, and how to go about it. And please, if you have any question, please make sure you send me an email or you can drop it in the comment section and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right, see you soon. And we'll talk about how to find the equation of tangent and normal.